Let me ask you a question. Have you ever walked into a crowded room and felt completely invisible? Like no one truly saw you, no one truly cared. Imagine living our moment not for a night, not for a week, but as a way of life. That is the reality for so many people out there, a reality that feels heavy, that feels silent, and yet screams at them every single day. Ladies and gentlemen, let me ask you something. Have you ever walked into a room full of people and felt utterly invisible? Have you ever sat in the middle of laughter, conversations, and handshakes and realized that none of it was meant for you? Imagine living that moment every single day, not as an occasional experience, but as your reality. For some, being without friends is not a temporary state, it's a way of life. And let's be honest, it's not easy. The silence, the loneliness, the questions, what's wrong with me? Or why doesn't anyone stay? It can eat away at you. But let me tell you this, being a man with no friends doesn't define who you are. It only defines where you are right now. And where you are is not where you have to stay. We live in a world where being alone is seen as a weakness. We equate friendships with value, as if the number of people who like you or follow you determines your worth. But let me ask you something else. How many of those connections are real? How many of those friendships go beyond the surface? Sometimes being alone is not about failing to connect. It's about failing to settle for connections that don't serve you. And that's what this is about, understanding why we feel alone, what we can learn from it, and how to move forward. When you don't have friends, the world can feel cold. You might start to believe you're not good enough or that you're destined to live life on your own. But let me tell you something powerful. Loneliness, as painful as it is, can be one of life's greatest teachers. You learn to listen to yourself, to understand your own heart, and to find strength in places you never thought to look. Being alone forces you to confront who you are without the distractions of others' opinions or expectations. It's in that silence that you discover what truly matters to you. But let's not romanticize it. Loneliness can hurt. It can hurt deeply. It can make you doubt your worth, question your choices, and even lose faith in yourself. I know that feeling because in one way or another, we've all been there. But here's the thing, loneliness isn't permanent. It's not a life sentence. It's a challenge, a test, and ultimately an opportunity. See, when you hit rock bottom, there's only one direction to go, and that's up. The climb might be hard, but it's worth it. The first step is to recognize that being friendless doesn't mean you're broken. It doesn't mean you're unworthy of love or connection. It simply means you haven't found your people yet. And that's okay. Life isn't about fitting into every circle. It's about finding the right one. It's about creating meaningful relationships that nourish your soul, not just your ego. And that takes time. It takes patience. Most importantly, it takes courage to put yourself out there, to risk rejection, and to show up as your authentic self. I know what you're thinking, but what if I try and no one cares? What if I open up and it doesn't work? Let me tell you something. Every great story begins with a risk. Every strong connection starts with vulnerability. The people who truly matter, the ones who are meant to walk this journey with you, will see you for who you are, not for who you pretend to be. But you've got to give them the chance to see you. You've got to believe that you're worth seeing. Now let's talk about something else, the power of giving. One of the most transformative ways to build connection is to focus on what you can offer, not just what you can receive. Be the friend you wish you had. Reach out to someone who looks like they're struggling. Show kindness without expecting anything in return. When you start to give, you shift the focus from your loneliness to others' needs, and in that process, something magical happens. You start to build bridges. You start to find connection in unexpected places. But don't forget, it's not just about others, it's about you too. Take care of yourself. Learn to enjoy your own company. Pursue your passions, your interests, and the things that make you come alive. When you live authentically, you attract people who resonate with your energy. And those are the friendships that last. Those are the connections that matter. So here's my message to you, being a man with no friends, that make you less. It doesn't make you unworthy. It makes you human. And being human means you have the capacity to grow, to change, and to create a life filled with love and connection. Your story isn't over, it's just beginning. And I promise you this, if you're willing to take that first step to open your heart and to believe in your own worth, you'll find that the world is far more welcoming than you might think. This isn't the end of the road, it's the start of a new one. So go out there and take a risk and read your story. Because you're not defined by the friends you don't have. You're defined by the person you choose to become. Imagine stepping into a room full of people, the air buzzing with laughter and conversation, but somehow you feel completely alone. You look around and realize that no one is really looking back at you. No one notices you. No one acknowledges you're present. And in that moment, the weight of isolation sinks in. Now imagine living with that feeling every single day, not as a fleeting moment, but as your reality. For some, being without friends isn't a phase, it's a state of existence. It's lonely, it's quiet, and it often feels like an endless loop of questions. Why am I always on the outside looking in? What's wrong with me? But let me tell you something, being a man with no friends doesn't define who you are. It doesn't limit what you can become. In fact, there's only one chapter in the book of your life, and every chapter can be rewritten. Loneliness has a way of creeping into your soul, making you question your worth. Society constantly tells us that friendships are the measure of our value, that popularity equals success, and that being alone is something to be ashamed of. But the truth is, many of the people who seem surrounded by others are still lonely. They hide it behind smiles, behind casual conversations, and behind the number of likes on their social media posts. Being friendless doesn't mean you failed. It simply means you haven't yet found the people who truly see you for who you are. And sometimes the journey to find those people is where you learn the most about yourself. When you're alone, it can feel like the silence is unbearable. The days stretch on and the nights seem even longer. There's no one to call, no one to laugh with, and no one to share the weight of your thoughts. But in that silence, there's also a kind of power, a chance to reflect, to understand yourself in a way you never could when surrounded by noise. Loneliness is uncomfortable, but it's also a mirror. It shows you who you are when no one else is watching. And that self-awareness can become your greatest strength. It's in those quiet moments that you begin to uncover what truly matters to you. That doesn't mean the pain of being alone isn't real. It is. The sting of rejection, the longing for connection, and the ache of feeling unseen are all deeply human experiences. But here's the thing, those feelings don't have to be permanent. Loneliness is not your destiny, it's a season. And like any season, it will pass, but only if you're willing to take toward change. The key is to recognize that being alone isn't a reflection of your value. It's an opportunity, a difficult one, yes, but opportunity nonetheless to grow, to heal, and to prepare yourself for the relationships that are waiting for you. The first step in breaking free from isolation is to shift your mindset. Stop looking at yourself as someone who's been left out and start seeing yourself as someone who's just beginning their journey to find the right people. Not everyone is meant to be in your life. Some friendships don't last, and that's okay. The goal isn't to have as many friends as possible. It's to have the right ones, people who see you, understand you, and walk beside you through life. Those connections take time and they require patience, but they also require courage. Courage means putting yourself out there even when it's hard. It means risking rejection, stepping outside of your comfort zone, and being vulnerable. Yes, it's scary, but it's also the only way to create something real. Start small. Smile at someone, strike up a conversation, or join a group where you can meet people who share your interests. It won't happen overnight, and it might not happen the first few times you try. But every step you take brings you closer to finding your tribe. And here's another thing to remember. The best way to build connection is to be the kind of friend you wish you had. Instead of focusing on what you don't have, focus on what you can give. Reach out to someone who looks like they're struggling. Offer kindness without expecting anything in return. When you give without fear, you open doors to relationships that are built on genuine connection. Lastly, don't forget about yourself. Take this time to invest in who you are. Pursue your passions, explore your interests, and become the kind of person who attracts the right people. When you live authentically, you radiate a kind of energy that draws others to you. Those who are meant to be in your life will see that light, and they'll be drawn to it. Being a man with no friends doesn't mean you're broken or unworthy. It means you're in a season of growth, of reflection on transformation. Your story isn't finished. It's just beginning. The people who are meant to be in your life are out there waiting for you to show up. So take that first step and keep walking, because you are not defined by the friends you don't have. You are defined by the strength, the courage, and the heart you show in your journey to find them. Imagine a life where the world feels distant, like a stage you're watching but never stepping onto. You walk through your days unnoticed, unheard, and untouched by connection. You see others laughing, sharing, and bonding, but you feel like an outsider looking in, unable to bridge the gap. That's what it feels like to be a man with no friends. It's a life of silence, questions, and sometimes even shame. But let me tell you something you may not have considered. Being friendless doesn't mean you're flawed. It doesn't mean you're incapable of love or connection. It simply means you're standing in a moment of solitude, a moment that can either define you or refine you, depending on how you choose to see it. In our world, friendships are often treated as status symbols. The more friends you have, the more valuable you're perceived to be. Social media amplifies this illusion, making it seem like everyone is surrounded by countless people who adore them. But how much of it is real? How many of those so-called friendships are meaningful? And how many of those people feel truly seen and understood? The truth is, being surrounded by people doesn't guarantee you won't feel lonely. And being alone doesn't mean you're destined to feel lonely forever. It's not about the number of friends you have, it's about the depth of the connections you make. The experience of having no friends can be devastating. It can leave you questioning your self-worth and wondering if something is wrong with you. You might replay conversations in your head, analyzing what you said or did wrong. You might withdraw, thinking it's easier to protect yourself than to risk more rejection. But in that withdrawal, you lose something vital, the opportunity to grow. Because here's the hard truth, loneliness is uncomfortable, but it's also an invitation. It's an invitation to look inward, to understand yourself better, and to prepare for the relationships that are yet to come. When you're alone, you're faced with yourself in a way that's raw and unfiltered. There are no distractions, no one to validate you, and no one to lean on. It's just you, your thoughts, and your emotions. That kind of solitude can be intimidating, but it can also be transformative. It's in those moments of quiet that you discover who you are, what you want, and what truly matters to you. You start to realize that your worth isn't tied to how many people surround you, but to the kind of person you are when no one is watching. But let's not sugarcoat it, loneliness hurts. It's a weight that can feel unbearable at times. The ache of wanting someone to talk to, someone to laugh with, or someone to simply sit beside you can be overwhelming. And yet that pain isn't permanent. It's not a life sentence. It's a signal that you crave connection. And that craving is part of what makes you human. It's also a reminder that you have the power to change your circumstance, even if it feels impossible in the moment. The first step toward change is understanding that being without friends doesn't make you less valuable. It doesn't mean you're broken or unlovable. It simply means you haven't found your people yet. And finding those people takes time. It takes patience. And it takes effort. Most of all, it takes courage. Where you have to be willing to put yourself out there, to risk rejection, and to show up as your authentic self. It's not easy, but it's necessary. Because the connections that truly matter, the ones that fill your soul, can only happen when you're brave enough to be seen. Start small. Say hello to someone you pass regularly. Join a group or a community that shares your interests. Volunteer for a cause that resonates with you. These small actions might not lead to instant friendships, but they open the door. And once the door is open, the possibilities are endless. Every step you take brings you closer to the kind of relationships that matter, the kind where you feel understood, valued, and accepted. In the meantime, focus on yourself. Use this season of solitude to grow, to learn, and to pursue the things that bring you joy. When you invest in yourself, you become the kind of person who naturally attracts others. People unto authenticity, to passion, and to kindness. By becoming the best version of yourself, you create the foundation for meaningful connections to flourish. Remember, being a man with no friends is not a permanent label. It's a moment in time, a moment that can change if you're willing to take action. Your story isn't over. In fact, it's just beginning. The people who are meant to be in your life are out there waiting for you to find them. So don't give up. Keep moving forward. Keep believing in your worth, because you are not defined by the friends you don't have. You are defined by the courage you show in building the life and the connections you deserve. Picture this: you're surrounded by people, yet somehow you feel completely alone. The conversations around you are lively, the laughter fills the air, and connections seem to come so easily to everyone else. But for you, it's different. You're there, but not part of it. It's as if there's an invisible wall separating you from the rest of the world. You don't know how to break through, and after a while, you stop trying. That's the life of a man with no friends. It's isolating, it's painful, and it can make you feel like you're drifting through life without an anchor. But let me tell you something right now. This moment, this feeling doesn't have to define you. Being without friends isn't the end of your story. It's the beginning of something new. We live in a world where friendships and connections are seen as measures of success. Society tells us that if you don't have a group of friends, there's something wrong with you. Social media amplifies this message, bombarding us with images of people surrounded by smiling faces, celebrating moments that seem so effortless and perfect. But let me ask you, how much of that is real? How many of those relationships go beyond the surface? Being surrounded by people doesn't necessarily mean you're truly connected. And being alone doesn't mean you're incapable of connection. The quality of your relationships will always matter far more than the quantity. Still, the weight of loneliness can feel crushing. It's not just about not having people to talk to, it's about the deeper sense of emptiness that comes with it. The silence can be deafening. The world can feel like it's moving forward without you. And you're stuck in place, unsure how to catch up. You might even start to question yourself. Am I not interesting enough? Am I too much? Well, not enough. These questions can loop in your mind until they chip away at your confidence and your sense of self-worth. But here's the truth you need to hear. Loneliness doesn't mean there's something wrong with you. It's not a reflection of your value as a person. Loneliness is simply a signal, a reminder that you're human, and that connection is something you deeply need and deserve. It's not a flaw, it's an opportunity. It's a chance to take a step back, look inward, and understand yourself better. Because before you can truly connect with others, you have to first connect with yourself. When you're alone, you have a unique opportunity to grow. Solitude, though often uncomfortable, is a powerful teacher. It forces you to face your thoughts, your fears, and your desires without distraction. It gives you the space to reflect on who you are, what you want from life, and what kind of relationships you hope to build. It's in those moments of stillness that you begin to discover your own strength. You start to realize that your worth isn't tied to how many people are around you, but to the person you are when no one is looking. That said, loneliness is not something to romanticize or not easy. It's not pleasant. And it's not something anyone should have to endure for long periods of time. But it is something you can work through. The first step is shifting your perspective. Stop seeing yourself as someone who's been left out. And start seeing yourself as someone who's still searching for their people. Finding meaningful connections takes time. It's not about trying to fit into every group or pleasing everyone you meet. It's about finding those few people who see you for who you truly are and accept you unconditionally. Building those connections requires courage. It means putting yourself out there even when it feels scary. It means risking rejection because the reward is worth it. Start small. Say yes to invitations even if they're outside your comfort zone. Join communities or groups where people share your interests. Strike up conversations even if they're awkward at first. These small steps might not lead to instant friendships, but they open the door to possibilities. And every small step is a victory in itself. But connection isn't just about seeking, it's also about giving. Be the friend you wish you had. Reach out to others who might be feeling the same way. Offer kindness even when you don't have to. When you focus on giving rather than just receiving, something incredible happens. You create bonds that are built on trust and mutual care. These are the kinds of relationships that last. In the meantime, invest in yourself. Use this period of solitude to do the things you love. Explore your passions and become the best version of yourself. When you live authentically, you naturally attract people who resonate with your energy. People are drawn to those who are confident in their own skin. And that kind of confidence doesn't come from others, it comes from within. Remember, being a man with no friends doesn't mean you're destined to be alone forever. It's just a chapter in your story, and every chapter has the potential for a new beginning. Your people are out there waiting for you to find them, and they're looking for someone just like you. So don't give up. Keep moving forward. Keep believing in your worth. Because you're not defined by the absence of friends, you're defined by the courage you show in creating the connections you deserve. Picture this, you're sitting alone in a crowded room surrounded by the buzz of conversations and laughter. People pass by, their lives intertwine with others while you remain unnoticed, almost invisible. It's not that you don't want to be part of it, you do, but something holds you back. Maybe it's the fear of rejection, or maybe it's the weight of past experiences. Whatever it is, it leaves you standing on the sidelines, yearning for connection but unsure how to take the first step. This is the reality for many who feel the sting of loneliness, who live as men with no friends. It's a difficult existence, but it's not the end of the story. In fact, it can be the start of a powerful transformation. Loneliness is a universal experience, yet it's often treated like a shameful secret. Society places so much value on having friends, on being surrounded by people who validate your worth, that being alone can feel like a failure. Social media only amplifies this pressure, showcasing curated lives filled with connections and celebrations. But let me tell you something, not everything you see is real. Behind the smiling photos and the group selfies, there are people who feel just as lonely, just as isolated. The difference is they hide it well. Loneliness doesn't mean you're flawed. It doesn't mean you're less than anyone else. It's a feeling, not a fact, and like all feelings, it can change. The pain of having no friends is real, though. It's not just the absence of company, it's the absence of belonging. It's the feeling of drifting through life without anyone to anchor you, without anyone to share your thoughts, your joys, or your struggles. It's easy to start believing that the problem lies with you, that you're somehow unworthy of connection. But that belief is a lie. Your worth isn't determined by how many friends you have or how often your phone buzzes with messages. Your worth comes from who you are, from the unique combination of experiences, dreams, and values that make you you. Still, loneliness can be a heavy burden to bear. It can make you question yourself, and it can make the world seem like a colder, less welcoming place. But here's something you need to understand. Being alone doesn't have to be a permanent state. It's not a sentence, it's a season. And like all seasons, it will pass. The key is to use this time wisely, to turn inward and discover the strength and potential that lives within you. When you're alone, you have an opportunity that many people overlook, the chance to truly get to know yourself. In the quiet moments, without the noise of other people's opinions or expectations, you can start to understand who you are and what you want from life. This self-awareness is powerful. It's the foundation on which you can build meaningful connections in the future. Because the truth is, the best relationships are born from authenticity. When you know yourself, when you embrace your strengths and acknowledge your weaknesses, you attract people who value you for who you truly are. But self-awareness isn't enough on its own. To move from loneliness to connection, you have to take action. And that action starts with courage. It's not easy to put yourself out there, especially if you've been hurt or rejected in the past. But every step, no matter how small, brings you closer to connections you crave. Maybe it's starting a conversation with a coworker, joining a club or group, or simply saying hello to someone you pass regularly. These small moments of bravery can lead to something bigger, something meaningful. And while you're working to find connections, don't forget the power of giving. Be the kind of friend you wish you had. Offer kindness, listen without judgment, and look for ways to make others feel seen and valued. When you focus on giving instead of just receiving, you create the kind of relationships that are built on trust and mutual respect. These are the relationships that last. As you take these steps, remember to be patient with yourself. Building meaningful connection takes time, and not every attempt will lead to friendship. That's okay. Each experience teaches you something. Every interaction brings you closer to the people who are meant to be in your life. In the meantime, don't neglect yourself. Use this time to grow, to explore your passions, and to become the best version of yourself. Pursue the things that make you happy and let your enthusiasm shine. When you live authentically and confidently, you naturally attract others who resonate with your energy. Being a man with no friends is not a reflection of your worth, it's a moment in your journey. It's a chance to learn, to grow, and to prepare yourself for the connections that are waiting for you. Your story isn't over. The people who will see you, value you, and walk beside you are out there. And they're waiting for someone just like you. So don't let loneliness define you. Let it refine you. Take that first step and keep moving forward, because the life you deserve is still ahead of you. Imagine waking up each day to silence, carrying the weight of your thoughts without anyone to share them with. You go about your routine, seeing people interacting, laughing, and bonding while you stand on the periphery, unseen and unheard. It's not just the absence of conversation, it's the absence of connection, the absence of someone who genuinely understands you. This is what it feels like to be a man with no friends. It's a lonely existence, one that can feel isolating and even hopeless at times. But let me tell you this, while this moment of solitude might feel heavy, it's not a permanent state. It's not a reflection of your worth. Instead, it can be an opportunity to redefine your journey, rebuild your confidence, and rediscover the power of connection. The experience of loneliness is often misunderstood. People see it as a flaw, a sign that someone is doing something wrong. But loneliness isn't a failure, it's a universal human experience. At some point, everyone has felt out of place, disconnected, or isolated. The difference is how we choose to respond to it. Loneliness doesn't define you, it reveals to you the parts of yourself that crave attention and care. It's a signal, a wake-up call that says it's time to reconnect with yourself first, and then with the world around you. In a society that celebrates extroversion and constant social interaction, being alone can feel like a stigma. Social media bombards us with images of people surrounded by friends, attending parties, and living what seems to be a picture-perfect life. But let's be honest, how much of that is authentic? How many of those connections are meaningful? How many of those people are truly happy? The reality is, having a crowd around you doesn't guarantee fulfillment. And being alone doesn't mean you're broken. True connection is about depth, not numbers. It's about finding people who truly see you, understand you, and accept you as you are. That said, the pain of loneliness is real. It can weigh heavily on your heart, make you question your self-worth. You might start to wonder if something is wrong with you, if you're not interesting enough, or if you're somehow unworthy of friendship. These thoughts can be relentless, feeding your insecurities and creating a vicious cycle of doubt and withdrawal. But here's the truth. Your value as a person is not determined by the number of friends you have. It's determined by the kindness you show, the integrity you live by, and the authenticity you bring to the world. Being alone doesn't have to be a punishment. It can be a period of profound growth. Solitude gives you the space to reflect on who you are, what you want, and what truly matters to you. It's a time to focus on self-improvement, to pursue your passions, and to build a life that aligns with your values. When you embrace this period of solitude, you begin to understand yourself in ways that can only happen in the quiet moments. And when you know yourself, your strengths, your weaknesses, your desires, you become more equipped to connect with others on a deeper level. But growth isn't enough on its own. To move beyond loneliness, you need to take action. This requires courage, because stepping out of your comfort zone can be intimidating, especially if you've been hurt or rejected in the past. But every small step you take opens the door to new possibilities. Maybe it's joining a group that shares your interests, starting conversation with someone new, or simply being open to opportunities for connection. These moments might feel awkward or uncomfortable at first, but they're necessary. They're the building blocks of relationships. And as you take these steps, remember that connection isn't just about finding people who can give you something. It's also about giving. Be the friend you wish you had. Show kindness, listen without judgment, and offer support to those around you. When you approach relationships with a spirit of generosity, you create bonds that are rooted in trust and mutual respect. These are the connections that truly matter. It's also important to manage your expectations. Building meaningful relationships takes time, and not every interaction will lead to a deep connection. That's okay. The process of meeting people, learning from them, and growing through your experiences is just as valuable as the relationships themselves. Each step brings you closer to finding the people who truly align with your values and your energy. In the meantime, don't neglect yourself. Use this time to invest in your personal growth, to explore your passions, and to embrace the things that bring you joy. When you focus on becoming the best version of yourself, you naturally attract people who resonate with your authenticity and confidence. People are drawn to those who are comfortable in their own skin, and that kind of self-assurance comes from within. Being a man with no friends isn't a permanent label. It's a moment in your journey. It's an opportunity to pause, reflect, and realign. Your story is still unfolding. And the people who walk alongside you are out there waiting for the right moment to cross paths with you. Don't give up on the idea of connection. Don't let loneliness define you. Instead, take the steps needed to create the life and relationships you deserve. Because you are worthy of connection. And the best chapters of your story are yet to come.